Today on Storytime, how I got started in this career, how a sex tape from a professional wrestler, an illegitimate ad agency, and getting fired from being an organic person set me up to put my credit card into Facebook and within a year manage $1 million a day on Facebook. This is going to be a fun one. By the way, if you like this stuff, before we get started, don't be shy. Click that thing right there so you can subscribe to all these videos. Every week we do a story time. We do a deep dive masterclass. We also do multiple lessons. So subscribe so you don't miss any of that stuff. Let's go. By the way, if you like this and you're interested, please do me a favor and tell one person all about it. Okay, let's get started. So I moved to LA in 2012. Now before that, I was a SiriusXM radio personality and a true musician. But there happened to be this big scandal around a sex tape of a professional wrestler, and ended up getting this huge thing that brought down this whole like tabloid news outlet. And then this big guy that was really famous in talk radio in New York pulled his funding from where I was. And at the time I was living in Orlando, but I was doing radio in Tampa. And long story short, the radio station went out of business. The company that broke the sex tape news, they went out of business. There was like an $800 million lawsuit, and I ended up 2,500 miles away. So I got started. I did an interview with this ad agency, and they're basically asking us to falsify traffic, right? So I was running up a whole bunch of fake video views for Disney princess, Disney teen stars, and to get video, views for their like YouTube, right? So I started out, now everybody in the office was like watching the video and refreshing. It was just basically going in the background while they did other things, and everybody kind of had a quota. So there was that, and there was also one or two other companies that we were doing where we were just trying to create users and interests. So we literally created fake accounts and just had to plow through hundreds of accounts. We were all given like, you have to make 100 accounts in a day and then get like 1,000 views and do all this other stuff. And I mean, it was a social media shop, and that's what they did. It was on Hollywood Boulevard. That was my first job, and it was $10 an hour, and I worked in the data entry, first job in LA, and worked in the data entry department. And they got upset with me because I rarely ever showed up on time, and I wasn't sitting at my desk most of the time, and if I was watching TV. Now, the reason was because I'd figured out how to run virtual machines. So I would have virtual machines basically in the background, a few instances of them, loading up YouTube on 3 or 4 different browsers, watching 30 seconds of video and refreshing, and then changing the IP address and doing it over and over again. So I could get like 10,000, 50,000 views in a day while not doing anything. Back in the day when that's how you got views on YouTube. One way. And then I would just sit there and I made up the system so I could plow through. I could make like 50 accounts an hour. So I'd put in a hard like 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours work. And they were paying me $10 an hour, and I just ended up watching all of like The Wire and and Mad Men and like 2 other shows, and just sat there watching shit. And I'd work, when I had the chance to, and only when I really needed to. So I didn't put in a lot of work. But long story short, the big company that we were making accounts for realized what we were doing, and then fired the agency. So it was a last hired, first fired type situation. So they let me go, and I happened to develop a couple friendships and made some other relationships with some other businesses, and basically built my own little agency out of that. We ended up going on the pitch and did the organic, the social gifting. By the way, if you want to watch the video on how I won the pitch, you can see the video right there. It was a game show on AMC, and it was aired before or after Mad Men, which was a big show at the time. So that was really cool, and we won the business 100 flowers. And then the guy that was my business partner that started the agency with me was this big like investor lawyer guy, and he basically fired me. He had written up the contracts to make the company, and basically wrote it in a way that he owned everything. It wasn't my company, even though I started it, and he took all the relationships, and I was out on the street. So I took again with me one or two clients that worked. And I was doing all organic, no paid media at the time, because it wasn't really an option. And so I was running some accounts, and I was charging like $2,000 a month to run some organic stuff, and I was doing well, right? I had a couple of accounts, and I was paying the bills and doing things like that. And then my biggest account came to me, and he said, "Hey, I have to let you go. I shopped $100 into Facebook ads, and it did more for me than me paying you $2,000 a month did." And I was like, a little heartbroken, but also completely understood. Like, this guy, like, it is not worth him to pay me $2,000 when he can pay $100. Like, what am I doing? And he fired me. And he paid out for the rest of the month, and that was that. So I had some carbohydrate therapy that day, And then the next day, I threw my credit card into Facebook and started promoting my band. And I quickly got my band to thousands of page likes, which at the time on Facebook was a big deal. And, got us up to, at this point now, we're over 50,000 followers on Instagram. We're verified, all that fun stuff. And I started basically running paid media accounts, and I knew how to do it well enough. And I got a job at a little shop in Santa Monica, and I was running the paid media efforts for Jamba Juice that basically treated paid media as hitting the boost post function that exists now. Back before that existed, you had to do that all manually, and I was the guy that did it. And also did some cruise lines and some other things. And then eventually I got to working for another ad agency that was in Hollywood. And I was doing all the paid media for Robert Rodriguez, Jay and Silent Bob, Danny Trejo, stuff like that. And that's actually how I got my Instagram account verified. I put my name in with a couple other things, and the rep is just like, "Okay, cool. This is the guy from Circle Jerks. This is the guy from the movies. This is the guy from this TV show. Here's this band. All right, cool. You're all verified. Cool," which is awesome. And so that was a lot of fun. And I was probably doing a good, again, hour and a half, 2 hours worth of work, because we had decent contracts. I wasn't getting paid very well, but it was really easy to make money. And I was doing a lot of testing, just working every single button, because nobody taught me what I was supposed to do. They were just like, "Oh, you know how to do this? Cool. Can you do it for us?" Okay. And it was this guy's like one-bedroom apartment. He basically set up his living room as like an office, and he was just plowing through dollars, and great for him. And then what happened was there was a job opening at Omnicom, and I applied for it. I mean, I had applied for other agency jobs with other agencies, and nobody had ever replied back. But I got the interview for a supervisor role, which is basically like you need 5-10 years experience. Now, mind you, Facebook ads hadn't even been around for 5 or 10 years. But they said you need 5 or 10 years experience, X, Y, and Z. And I went into the interview, and I had an MBA, and I'd been running paid media, not for very long, but they didn't know that. And I could answer all of their questions because I'd done a lot of homework on understanding, like, do I actually know how to do this? And long story short, like, they gave me the job, which is crazy. And I went from basically 3 months, 6 months, 9 months before that, I had never run a Facebook ad at all. And they put me in charge of CBS, Nissan, and Henkel, working alongside the Levi and Activision team. And 7-figure daily budgets. And I had no idea what I was doing. And when I would ask for help, my boss would tell me to check my job description and to move right along. And so basically, nobody ever taught me what I was supposed to do, which means I never learned the wrong advice. Because a lot of people at the time understood Facebook to basically be Google's ugly cousin. And so they ran everything like Google. And so I never learned the proper way of doing CPC stuff before I learned Facebook. And then the Facebook Pixel came in. And that was like an apocalypse, even worse than iOS 14. It was going to ruin everything. And, long story short, like, I was a terrible employee, and I got fired from that job, and I ended up working for another agency and working client side, going to an FMP, then becoming a Facebook disruptor, bringing up brands from 7 and 8 figures and spending, a god-awful amount of money. All of it basically happened because inherently I had 3 things going for me. One, I'm a really good interview. Like, you put me in a room with somebody for 15, 20 minutes, they're going to be stoked on working with me. Number 2, I always said yes and then figured it out. And then number three, whenever I was presented with an obstacle, I took that as an opportunity to learn how to do things. And I very rarely ever learned because somebody told me how you were supposed to do things. And that was basically just a luxury because I came in once Facebook was good enough to spend a good amount of money on, but not sophisticated enough that it was easy. And I never learned how you're supposed to do Google ads. So I had to basically do Facebook in a way where I had to figure everything out on my own. And I made everything a test. I tested a new button, a new option with every single campaign, and I wrote those as case studies that Facebook ended up using, and really made myself a reputation. So the fun bottom line of the story is, if Hulk Hogan didn't make that sex tape with Bubba Love Sponge's wife, if that guy had not put in $100 into his ad account, if I had not gotten fired from that agency because their client had figured out what they were doing was completely illegitimate, if me winning that 1-800-Flowers account, if we had lost that business, or if I had been more apt to protect myself legally, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And so the fun thing about it is we all face a lot of struggles. And the path to success is rarely ever linear. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I'm now one of the best people in the world at what I do. And it's basically because nobody ever taught me the wrong way. Because nobody even knew what they were doing when I started. And every obstacle that came my way was an opportunity to succeed. And I wholeheartedly embraced that. Because failure basically just wasn't ever an option. There wasn't a backup plan. I never had one. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's the moral of the story there. That's the story time for today. I hope that was interesting. I hope that was funny. Like, that is so bizarre. And I don't know anybody else with a story that goes halfway similar. But, yeah. A sex tape, getting fired, winning a TV game show, and being a terrible hire is the reason that I'm now one of the top 100 Facebook advertisers in the country. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. And if you want to see more stuff, I'm going to do one of these, and you can just check out either of these guys. All right. Bye.